Tenderloin Rooftop Gardens, which is they're really wonderful. So you're welcome to join us when we do that. Planetdrome also publishes a newsletter called The Pulse and a number of books, and partners with a city in Bahia de Caracas, Ecuador, in helping it become an ecological city, finding ways that it can be locally sustainable. I'm particularly happy, and in the Bay Area, Planetdrome has a Green City calendar of events, ecological events, and sustainability-oriented events that's online at our website. And if you ever have a free afternoon or evening, want to take a hike, go to a class, see an interesting presentation, check out the Green City calendar. And our most recent project is a resource which we're calling the Green City Network, which is information about the ecology and sustainability oriented organizations in the Bay Area. And we'll probably have that up online soon. I think at the back table there are flyers to fill out if you're part of that kind of an organization and want to be listed on the network, or you know some people that would. There are sign-up sheets for it, and also it can be done online. So Planetdrome is particularly happy to host this evening because I think that Proposition F has given everyone the opportunity to think about water. And water is one of our basics of life. And so that's why we thought we could have an evening of discussion and debate about water, and we will reconsider our water. Where does our water come from? If we were in New York, they would say, the tap. But actually, there's something beyond that. Actually, there are a lot of answers beyond that. So thank you to the presenters for coming, and to Jason. Jason Mark is going to be our moderator tonight. Jason is the editor of Earth Island Journal, which is a quarterly environmental magazine, and he's also the co-manager of the Alemany Gardens, which is a 3-acre organic fruit and vegetable farm on Alemany, the far side of Bernal Heights. If you have never been there, I encourage you also to go there. It's incredible. San Francisco's Alemany Gardens are wonderful. And Jason is also a writer, and he writes on environmental and agriculture, and he has had writings, his writings have appeared in the Chronicle, The Nation, The Progressive, Orion magazine, and maybe most important, Gastronomica. So, Jason, if you take over. Do you need this?
Well, thanks, Judy. It's always good to have a Gastronomica reader in the house. Thank you all for coming this evening. Again, this is a debate on Proposition F, sponsored by the Planetdrome Foundation, and I'm really glad that all of you made it out here tonight to listen to some opposing viewpoints on this measure that's going to be before San Francisco voters on Election Day next month. So we're just going to jump right into it. First of all, please, if you've got any cell phones, iPhones, Blackberries, etc., if you could put those on silent or on airplane mode. And I'll tell you a little bit about the format. I'm going to introduce both Adrian and Mike, and then each of them I'm going to actually read the text of the proposition just so we're all on the same page. Each of them are going to have 5 minutes, roughly, for an opening statement. We're going to then dive straight into questions around the different elements of the proposition, and then go to questions from all of you, because I'm sure you've got many to share tonight, and we'll wrap it up about an hour from now. So to my left here is Mike Marshall. Mike is the Executive Director of Restore Hetch Hetchy, the national campaign to bring the Hetch Hetchy Valley in Yosemite National Park back to life. Mike's got 25 years of experience in political and activism and advocacy. He's lobbied the U.S. Congress has managed 2 statewide political campaigns here in California, and he's the former senior advisor to the Democratic National Committee and the National Democratic Institute for International Affairs. Additionally, Mike has served as the executive leader of numerous nonprofit organizations here in the Bay, including Under One Roof, the San Francisco LGBT Community Center, and Californians for Civil Marriage. He's an active leader of the Bay Area Water Stewards, a coalition of environmental organizations that work to incorporate conservation and habitat restoration goals into the SFPUC's ongoing operations. He lives here in the Hayes Valley neighborhood of San Francisco. All right, here is Adrian Covert. He is a manager of public policy at the Bay Area Council, which is a nonprofit public advocacy organization where he works on developing sustainable water and transportation policy for the Bay Area. Currently, current policy victories include the passage of the high-speed rail plan and increased state and federal funding to improve the Port of Oakland. Before he worked at the Bay Area Council, Adrian worked on the Repair California campaign for a state constitutional convention. And before that, he went to SF State here in the city where he got a BA in political science. Adrian, when not also working as an artist, lives and votes here in San Francisco, which maybe is the reason why Judy invited me. I don't live here in San Francisco. I'm a registered voter in Alameda County, so I can be happily impartial about this question. And the question is this. So I'm guessing if you guys are here, you've got a good sense of what Proposition F is about. But just for the record, let's read it. So this is the text that's going to appear on the ballot, 4 weeks from now. This measure will, 1, require the city to prepare a 2-phase plan to evaluate how to drain the Hetch Hetchy Reservoir and identify replacement water and power sources. 2, allocate $8 million to pay for the plan and create a 5-member task force to develop it. And 3, require the task force to complete the plan by November 1, 2015, and require the Board of Supervisors to consider placing on the ballot a charter amendment to approve the plan. So let's go first to Mike, because the burden of proof is on you. Why is this a good idea, and why should San Francisco voters pass this proposition?
Thanks, Jason, and thanks to, can you hear me? No. How's that? I'll tell you what, can I take it off and just stand up?
Sure.
Will that bug you? Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here, and thank you to the Drum Foundation for sponsoring tonight's event and the work that you do. And Jason, thanks for the work you do and for being here tonight. And Adrian, thanks for coming as well. And in fact, one of the reasons we put this initiative, that Restore Hetch Hetchy put this initiative on the ballot, was to create a conversation about water, which was long overdue in the city of San Francisco. And tonight, I hope you come away with a better sense of what Proposition F is, but also a better sense of San Francisco and its water policy, its focus on the future and the challenges we're going to face in the future, and some of the solutions that I think the city needs to start to consider. Really quickly, Jason read Proposition F. In fact, it's just a planning process. It puts the city on the trajectory of coming up with a much more focused idea of how it's going to manage its water resources. It's a 2-part planning process. Looks at building up our local water supplies, and then looks at improving the environment to undo the damage our water system has done over the last 100 years to Yosemite National Park, to this Tuolumne River, and to the San Francisco Bay. Those are the objectives of Proposition F, but you can't fix those problems unless you reform the water system. And that's what Proposition F does. It's only a planning process. At the end of it, if Proposition F passes, I don't get a restored Hetch Hetchy, you don't get recycled water, we don't get anything except a plan in 3 years that we, the voters of San Francisco, then can look at if, in fact, it appears on the 2016 ballot as a charter amendment. We'll have a much better sense of what's required to make those improvements. In order to really consider all this, it's important for us all to understand where our water comes from and what our plans are for the future. And many of us in San Francisco grow up here or grow up in the Bay Area drinking Hetch Hetchy water. And we believe that, and as a result of that, that our water comes from Hetch Hetchy. In fact, the primary water supply for San Francisco is the Tuolumne River, which runs through Hetch Hetchy Valley. And we store that water in 9 different reservoirs, not one reservoir. So what Proposition F does is look at consolidating from 9 reservoirs into 8 so we can reduce the environmental damage or the environmental footprint that we have on Yosemite National Park and more effectively guarantee our long-term water security. In order to do that, though, we need to get the city of San Francisco to be involved in that conversation. We know that it's possible. We know that it's possible to consolidate from 9 reservoirs to 8. And Adrian brought all of the studies here tonight that he's going to hold up and say, we've studied this to death. In fact, a lot of different agencies, the state of California, the federal government, the University of California, Davis, the Environmental Defense Fund, some other organizations, looked at all of these issues to varying degrees. San Francisco boycotted all of those studies, but each of them came up with the conclusion that San Francisco can be made whole. We can protect our water and power supplies, and at the same time, return the Hetch Hetchy Valley to the American people so it can be restored. But we need San Francisco to take control of that process, and we need to stop studying it, and in fact, we need to start coming up with a plan. These studies offer various scenarios. Only San Francisco is best suited to determine what's best for San Francisco. And so that's what Proposition F does, is it puts the city on the trajectory of a planning process that we all get to consider. At the end of the day, or in 2016 really, when we have this document, this plan to consider, at that point it becomes a values conversation.